All right, I'd like to call the April 23rd DEI subcommittee to order, noting that all subcommittee members are present from the board. We'd like to adjust the agenda before taking a motion to approve it. And the change to the agenda would be to, Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, it'd be to review the data on bullying and harassment first. Just so that we have a few people that are still coming for the earlier agenda items, and if we have time, or if if we still need more time, then I'd probably look at talking about the board student listening sessions. But once the students and everybody's here, then we can jump back to the top of the agenda.
Okay. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda with that adjustment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And then that brings us to public comments, and we have one public comment for today. Welcome, Gina.
So this is just a very brief comment, but as a staff member of the steering committee, I had some concerns about just timeline communication and timelines put in place for different progress that we might make. So Tiffany's not here yet, but I did want to express my appreciation to her because the newest version of the plan has some more specifics. And I'm just looking forward to our final meeting in May as the steering committee. And excited that in the last meeting, we did have family and a student representative. And I think that's just really important because if we want to see change, we can't do things the way that we've always done them and the way that we see them as primarily white staff members. So just wanted to express appreciation for that bit of progress and encourage you to do what you can to continue to push for specifics in terms of progress. Because I know that there are lots of fabulous people that serve on that staff steering committee who are more than willing to do the work if we just outline what those action items are and get to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So,
Okay, so Rebecca, if you could scroll down and bring up, just I think to kind of set the continuity, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but if you could start with the 21-22, we viewed that at the last meeting, but I think just for completeness, we have time to touch on both. So again, at our last meeting, we looked at our 21-22 data, and again, these are behavior reports that were entered into EduClimber. And as we reviewed those, and we can go to the next one down, Rebecca. For that year, we had, and again, 21-22, if you remember, was our first full year back after our virtual experience. We had 14 total incidents that were coded in that manner in EduClimber, equally divided between our two levels. You can see how they were distributed if they were determined to be on the basis of a protected class and the range of responses. So that was the 21-22 story. And then if we go here, this is our 22-23 data. And so if we scroll down, we, instead of 14 incidents, we had 18. And for last year, they were more weighted at the secondary level than the elementary level. If you remember the preceding year, it was a 7-7 split. Here we see the 5-13. 10 of these incidents, as we reviewed the data, were on the basis of a protected class. You can see how that's distributed there. there were 2 perpetrators who were repeat perpetrators, unlike the previous year. The least severe primary response was teaching a replacement behavior, but that was for a very young student. And the most severe primary response that was recorded was an in-school suspension, similar to the previous year. But that's kind of my takeaway on that was some consistency. But again, we did see 2 repeats. One thing I did not do was to see if these 2 repeats actually were in the previous year. As it occurs to me now, that probably would have been a good step. I just didn't do it. But again, I think in terms of the range of responses and the protected classes we see that are targeted in these incidents, there's a lot of continuity from year to year.
So, would these include situations where it was reported through our reporting system and then that found its way to the administration?
So some of them, not all of them.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
In general, our recommendation to staff is, if you're a teacher and you see something, put it directly into EduClimber. But if a student were to see it, they could enter into the reporting tool, and then we would review the information. If there was actionable information, we had names as opposed to anonymous. Then we followed up, it would find its way into here, yes.
Tim, have you always used EduClimber for reporting these kind of incidences, or is there more awareness now than there might have been in 21-22?
So EduClimber has been our data repository for several years now. So anything of this nature, regardless of how it got to us, if there was a behavior incident, would be an EduClimber. Now we are making a transition from EduClimber into a different product at the end of the school year here, but the change in incidents really wouldn't be related to EduClimber.
So, Tim is well aware, but I had the opportunity to attend one day of the MSAN conference last week that took place in Madison. And the very first speaker that I went to see spoke to reporting tools, reporting consistency, and some of the education that had to happen in her district. Now, she happened to be a member of a Dane County school district. The conference wasn't limited to the state of Wisconsin even, but she just happened to be a Dane County administrator. And one of the things she spoke to is that EduClimber, and I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
Never even seen EduClimber, so please correct what I'm about to say, that it does have the limitation in the sense that it has to be a report with a student's name associated to it. So they weren't having visibility to, if a student reported the use of a slur in a hallway, like a racially tied slur, or hateful language, that would be considered harassment, not just bullying. They went through a whole process of educating teachers and staff on the difference between bullying, what is harassment, what are its statuses, so that their reporting would be as accurate as possible. And they went to a different tool because they wanted to see the data when you didn't necessarily know exactly who the student was. Because if somebody's reporting something they hear in a hallway, they can give location and some generalities, but they can't say, I know, I'm a senior, I don't know who that freshman was, kind of situation. She did, give the caveat that if you make the effort to get good data, you need to be prepared for a great deal more reporting happening. And then she's like, from there, you take that data and do what you will with it. But it gave them a much clearer picture of what was actually happening. So I don't know if this new tool has the capability of doing reporting that isn't tied to a specific student, or if it still has that, what I'm expressing as a limitation, where the data will only be tied if it's a certain student.
So, I mean,
I can just chime in to say, I know the district is moving to what we're moving to.
Yeah.
They moved last year to what we're moving to, so my guess is.
I mean, I'm not even sure they. So and I wasn't in her presentation, but
Right.
heard a lot of positives. We're probably gonna try to
Yes.
bring her in to talk with us.
Yes, she had some
That's-
very actionable next
That's,
steps.
that's kind of it's an issue with reporting in general. So for us, our district reporting tool is designed to be the easy access with more flexible parameters. It could capture less detailed situations. The challenge with your primary behavior reporting tool is that's also your reporting tool for the state. And if something's coded as harassment or bullying, it is state reportable, period, end of discussion. And you need to be able then to tie it to specific individuals, not because the individuals are going up to the state, they're not. But the state is going to want to know the characteristics of those individuals. So there is a certain tension and trade-off between state and federal reporting requirements that require you, again, it's not like they're gonna say, Tim Shell did this, but they would say, Tim Shell was a white male student. You know, that kind of information is important for state and federal reporting. And so then, of course, you have to attach the individual to the record. There are other ways you can kind of supplement your reporting, so then you can kind of capture more of a broader pulse on what's happening.
Mhm.
But again, not having sat through her piece, I would love, we've talked about having her come in here to kind of share their experiences, because we're interested in.
And I would second, third, and fourth that.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was in that session too, and I was surprised. It was a good, solid, actionable, and some of the things that truthfully that we're planning to do, like that was kind of affirming to hear them talking about, like, these are our clear next steps. But then also had some other good ideas.
Okay.
Can we continue?
Yes.
And with that, that's that agenda item, and now we're at full strength on the student panel, and we're
Full
at
strength.
full strength.
Sorry, I mean,
Tiffany's joined
intermediate,
us.
Ran a little longer than I thought, so.
We're ready for our MSAN students.
All right. Supplements, I make sure you take some pictures, so don't mind me if I take pictures. But I know you will all have some talking points, kind of, at least from what Mr. Shovelman said, and attended the student MSAN event, and when I reached out, I suggested, can you share your experience, but also some of the action steps that maybe came out of the students too. So I'll let you each introduce yourself first, and then you can.
Okay, so my name is Eric Hernandez. I'm a junior and I am a part of the MSAN club. I've been in the MSAN since middle school.
My name is Johanna Angeles. I'm a sophomore, and this is my first year being part of MSAN.
I'm Tyler Zhang. I'm a sophomore, no, I'm a junior, and I recently joined MSAN. Actually, my first time being in MSAN was when this Shovelman invited me to come to the conference.
So about our experience, for me at the start, I would go into Zoom. It was during the quarantine, and there would be Zoom meetings, and it would be about other people like that looked like me. And it would be the MSAN meeting, and there I felt involved. They would ask us how we felt, actions, and thinking. And as I got into high school, we got meetings like once a month for like freshman and sophomore year. Now as a junior, I was able to take a part to the actual event that happened in MSAN. Went to the MSAN meeting, and there was a lot of talk about taking action, and we had to develop an action plan and share it to the whole group. So that with that, I was already working on something about taking AP courses, and making them more available for one of my other classes. So I thought this was a great idea to use what I already had and share it. And then, as a whole group, we put into the ideas, we gathered data. And, we shared it, and that inspired us to take more actions as we go on as a club.
I mean, Eric said a lot, of what we were doing at the conference. This being my first year, it was definitely something new for me, but I was definitely I felt very welcomed, and it was a very much like a space, where I felt like I belonged. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry.
My experience at the conference was very positive. As soon as we arrived, there were 5 of us, and I did not know anyone. And by the time we left, I knew like at least everyone to a certain degree. And it was a very nice experience because, well, as like someone who's not very social, it was nice getting like the opportunity to know some new people as well as other people from other districts. And yeah, everyone there was very accepting and very nice, especially from like the other people from different schools, because everyone understood that we all were in the same circumstances and how we were treated in our schools.
Tiffany, can I ask just to give a little context? Because I know like you went to the MSAM conference, which was really kind of the educator part of it. There was and then this part of it was really with students. And we participated in this aspect of MSAM for quite a few years, as you kind of alluded to. So can you give a little background as kind of when they're talking about MSAM on their end, what that means for students?
Yeah, so it's students from all over, from all different high schools, coming together and really, having that shared space in terms of, and a safe space. And I know one of the comments, that somebody made at one of the meetings had been to earlier is like, experiencing, walking into a room and seeing a lot of people just like yourself is like a really powerful experience. And then also being able to get to know students from other districts, but really the kind of outcome, I would say, is like what changes kind of need to take place back in your schools, or what are some areas that you really want to focus on? So that idea of not just being together and learning, but like how we're going to take all this learning and actually turn it into an action step. And that's where I feel like this year, especially, like we connected and now we have like a student on our DEI steering committee, and so that we can have a little bit more of a better conduit in terms of, what are some action steps and how do we continue to elevate the voices of our students and really help support some of those action steps moving forward. So. And was that the primary? I know the AP, like having AP courses be more accessible was kind of one of the primary. Were there any other specific action steps? I know that's what I remember as kind of being the big one.
Yeah, that was the big one.
That's what we've been working on. But also, I remember the people from MSAM, they're working on making the school like a more belonging place. Because when we went to the meeting, a big focus was belonging, and in many circumstances at our school, people that are not white, they don't feel as they belong and not represented. So when we were there, we felt that we belong. So other people are trying to like, how can we represent other people from our school? So they wanted to do like sharing our like staff that are bilingual or that speak other languages. I know that's one of the things, and then I would have to talk to other members who are like working on other projects.
I know that a lot of the members in MSAM each have like their own action plans. Like I know yours was like to talk with Mr. Shell. But we each have like our own little things, like trying to help like make the bigger picture, I guess.
Yeah, and one of our plans for this year is going to come to the co-curricular committee in June, is having like the MSAN group has kind of been an informal group, and we want to formalize that as an organization at the high school. So we have two advisors that have been the advisors, but we want to make sure that's a structure that stays in place and that they, you know, are an advisor like any other group, so that we have that as like paid positions, so that we know MSAN's going to continue on and that it has that adult support going forward as well. So that's coming up too as well in terms of just solidifying their commitment.
Yeah, a little background for our board members, as we've kind of alluded to, we've sent our students to the MSAN Student Consortium for quite a while, a number of years, to really kind of build that connection, bring back some of these actionable pieces. And I think at this point, they're at a point where it's really needing to kind of sustain it moving forward and wanting to just formalize it, like Tiffany said, as really a formal organization at the school. So just like we have other clubs, et cetera, this is a piece that we'll be bringing forward probably this summer when the co-curricular committee meets. Just basically to kind of coalesce the group of students who are working in this area.
And as we formalize it, I know we've kind of brainstormed this too, in terms of, like, we have other groups, we have BSU, Los Sonadores, you know, we have other groups, and we're kind of thinking like, should our MSAN kind of be our leadership, like action group, that we have representatives from all those other groups, and like this could kind of be our, you know, bringing everybody together to kind of get behind our actions. So that was kind of as we solidify and, you know, have a more formal organization, so.
Did you say June specifically or just sometime this summer?
I think
Yeah.
the next co-curricular meeting you said would probably be in June, but I don't, yeah.
It'll be
the next
whenever
one is.
we get the co-curricular report from the spring sports. Then that's when, so it'll probably be June, July.
Yeah.
That's usually the time frame of whenever Nick's ready, and then I bring that committee together, and then this would be part of that agenda. But it would definitely be this summer before school starts.
Yeah, we just want to make sure it's in place.
Yeah,
but-
it'll take place this summer.
I know Katie's on that one, or one of you on that one too. Co-curricular. Who are the other two?
Ted
Katie, Todd,
and Judy.
Judy. Yeah, and so that once you go through your reorg meeting and you decide on committees, then that'll be kind of, that's the committee that really addresses clubs. And I think it's kind of in preparation for next year.
Did you say you already have advisors?
You have two advisors that have been the advisors, I mean, informally
Right,
throughout
right,
this
right,
year,
right.
but we went to the student conference and we've been meeting regularly too. They have regular meetings and they kind of coordinate those agendas and things for the meetings. So.
Yeah, and I just underline that while kind of the student leadership's at the core of the MSAN student group mission, having stable advisorship is important. One, I mean, you as a group meet monthly or twice a month, depending, I think, on schedule. But you know, we joined MSAN in 2020, and so for a few years, the major student engagement things, as Eric mentioned, were conducted virtually. So this was the first year that an in-person student summit occurred. And as kind of our, you know, for districts that had been with MSAN longer, they were able to kind of dust off pre-pandemic plans and roll with them, but it was our first time. And fortunately for us, the way these things work is MSAN districts host it. And so Sun Prairie was the host, which meant even though it was in person, it was here in Dane County. So it was kind of a home game for us. But MSAN does have a national reach. And so next year, East Lansing, Michigan is the hosting district. So it'll be travel. So, you know, I think we all feel this way, but, you know, I would just say it's critically important when we have student activities that have a travel element, that we have stable advisorship, which really means stipended advisorship, to make sure these are well-organized, quality experiences. And so particularly as we look to, you know, maybe the three of you plus some of your, you know, your colleagues, you know, potentially going to Michigan in the fall, getting the stipend taken care of is important.
I apologize if I didn't hear it. How big is the MSAN group right now?
I don't have the exact number. I think it's around 8 to 10.
I was gonna guess 10, but it's the last meeting that I was at, so.
Yeah.
And you've made some connections, or you plan to make connections to kind of the staff DEI group as well with.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we added a student from that also serves on the MSAN group and also serves in BSU, and he's our representative on the DEI steering committee too. So it's been, he was at, our last meeting was the first meeting that he's at, and it was just a great. He had a great experience, because I was a little bit worried, sitting with a bunch of educators and having these in-depth conversations, but he came up to me afterwards and said, no, this is really good. I'm glad I participated. I'm glad I was here. So I was glad to get that feedback. So.
Thank you so much for coming. I know it's not easy to talk to a bunch of adults you've never met before, but, and the cameras, but. You guys do great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate hearing your voice.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate us.
Taking time.
And thank you not only for coming, but for your initiative and being involved with this and making the change for the school.
And you're welcome to stay, and you're welcome to come anytime. But we also know we're getting on in the second semester, you may have other things that you. So, thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Have a great, and I did get some pictures, so I'll send this.
Awesome.
All right.
We can go.
So are we jumping back up to the,
I think we're over to you, Tiffany, on the
Yep.
committee update.
And I don't know, I brought some hard copies too. I don't know if people want.
I
hard
think they
copies.
have it both ways, whatever they prefer.
And Gina has this. Had printed it out. Good for you. You're ahead of me. Thank you. There you go. And this is just, I want to stress, this is draft, because it has not gone to our steering committee yet. And I'm really just looking for some feedback on the structure and and how I have it structured right now, because I tried to chunk it out into professional development, family engagement. And I look at my universal instruction, like what we plan to teach students, and it's pretty lengthy, but I wanted to take each item and tie it back to a piece of data as well. So, and I don't know that I did a great job at that piece. So I'm really just, in terms of, I think at our next meeting is where we really, once the DEI steering committee has dug into this and given feedback and things on the details, then would bring it back here in a more formal, no longer draft form. But I would really be interested in feedback in terms of just the structure and, are there any big rocks that we're missing in terms of this piece? And really in terms of the action steps, you're not going to see anything that you haven't heard about before in some of our updates and recommendations. The action steps are similar. We did add some timelines, in terms of if all 3 years are listed, then it means some things are ongoing throughout the years. Others we added kind of deadlines to, in terms of, we want to do this by the end of 25 or this by the end of the 25-26 school year. So I think we still have some of those details, like I said, to shore up with our committee when we meet again, but this was just kind of a first stab at it. And it'll be prettier in the next format, but this was our first attempt, so.
Yeah, it's a great start. I think it'll help to identify areas of focus in any given year for kicking things off, because if you try to do everything all at once, then you'll do nothing.
Right,
So-
exactly. And that's what I want to get from the
Okay.
committee too, is what's realistic, and also, especially around the professional development piece, really thinking about, okay, we only have, is it 5 professional development days a year, So, and we really had some conversations about how do we tie professional development in throughout the year, so it's not just one day, we've always generally use the January day, but how do we make sure we're doing some of those refresher trainings and Speak Up, for example, in August, or that we're doing another one in December. And so how do we weave it all together? But absolutely, especially around the professional development, just because there's always limited time, how do we target more specifically what we want to do each year? So I want to get more feedback from the committee in terms of what's realistic. So
So Tiffany, when you talk about the committee, you're talking about the staff steering.
Yes,
committee?
the steering committee.
And when you talk about these action steps, who developed these? Was that primarily you and your husband?
No, well, the committee really worked through a lot of these, like,
So
started out with recommendations and
Okay.
then kind of tied into some of those actions.
so the staff has had input into the action of it.
Our committee has, yeah.
And then
absolutely.
they're going to review it when we.
Right, so like at the last meeting, we really talked about like parent engagement pieces and professional development. Those are the areas we dug into, like, okay, we've gotten feedback from our parents, from our focus group and from some other venues, like what are some actionable next steps we can do around parent engagement? So at each meeting, we kind of have a chunk of time that's really like, how do we dig into this and make this something that we can have actionable? You know, we know what we want to do in the big picture, but how do we actually make it happen? So. And some things, you know, again, from the committee could get eliminated or pushed back to future years. It's just, this is kind of bringing together all the different action step ideas that we've had over the course. of
So do you
this year.
see the next step for the committee to prioritize the action steps? So what do you really want to focus on next year or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, because again, and what's realistic, you know, that's where even like our ed services team. You know, Amy and Tim do a lot of the professional development planning, so like, what's realistic in terms of what we can accomplish here? And really kind of prioritizing, like narrowing down what we want to do each year.
So your plan, Tiffany, then is to take it back to the committee and then, and if after that's done, then that comes back here.
Right. And in a, yeah, my hope is like in a kind of a final format plan. And of course, it can be changed and updated by the committee as time goes on, but I mean, there's definitely been, you know, from staff, especially after our January PD day, like what's next and what's the plan and where's the roadmap? You know, those were a lot of the questions that came out of that January day. So that was kind of our goal as a group, is like, okay, let's create a roadmap as well. So.
I think, Dawn, you've asked me kind of where are actionable items. I mean, I think when this comes through, this could be a piece that's kind of a recommendation to this committee to kind of then embrace this plan moving forward. So this may be kind of the actionable piece that comes from this committee, if that's. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things I
Absolutely.
think that there's probably a desire from staff to kind of know what's endorsed. And I think that would help with that part.
So. I mean, this is, a really robust plan. Knowing how staff development works. I guess I'm just a little concerned how we pack it into 3 years. You know, for example, something that, the elevate concept. I know it's in place in the middle school.
In the high school.
Is it totally in the high school or just?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
not
it-
100%, right? I mean,
So it's, the high school and the middle school were our first two schools.
Right.
Yeah. The intermediate school joined last year, so it is being used in 3 schools. High school is partway through a plan to rotate it through all departments on a semesterized basis.
Okay. And then like, the culturally sensitive classrooms, I mean, I could see that being a whole year
yeah,
PD,
definitely could be.
so. But that's what you guys have to figure out at this point.
Well, it was interesting at the session that Dawn was talking about earlier, they talked about having their plan be 7 to 10 years. And, you know, to really make, big
Right.
change, that 7 to 10 years. So I thought, wow, that's, you know, that, and their point being, like, we have to, you know, this takes time, but also we want to also show that we're moving in this direction in a more, you know, we're not just doing this for 1 year, we're not just checking a box.
Right.
We have a long range plan, so.
But they did accomplish a
A lot.
significant amount in just 7 months.
Okay.
I think the other thing to look at, Mark, is we often think of professional development as our professional development days. But there's lots of other places where things get embedded in. So it could be things that happen at a smaller micro PD level at a staff meeting. It could be things at administrative cabinet. It could be something as part of summer work. It could be embedded within other things. So I think that some of that plan is also to kind of see where it fits.
Yes.
Kind of speaking a little out of turn, but I think that's when you start to look at kind of the robustness of it. If it was all just tied to just the days that we have, it's really hard to get through it. But it's trying to figure out where does it fit in with other things that we're doing would be kind of, I think, one of the pieces that then would have to be kind of vetted out and see how we do.
And I think another piece of that was just like consistency, like, okay, these two buildings did this, but this one did, like, how do we just say, like, this is part of like a staff meeting in December or January, we're always gonna do our refresher training for Speak Up, like that's what we're gonna do every year. So it's not necessarily on a PB day, but it's also consistent across buildings, because I think that's the other piece that we saw differences.
Yeah, some of these need probably more robust training. Other of these, I mean, I see the reporting tools mentioned a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. That's just kind of embedded in other things.
Yeah, and the primary suggestion for that was just like, let's publicize.
So to that point, so as a new EduClimber, going to be sort of a seamless transition, or is it a major change for the staff?
So, I
We
mean,
heard from the high school how thrilled they were with the training they had and how well they felt it was working.
so I mean, I think the transition from EduClimber to Next Path is going to be pretty straightforward. But I think the bigger question, that will be something that'll have to get embedded at the start of the year. We used to do it this way, now we do it this way, but a lot of the actual fact, how you get things in is going to be very familiar from one to the other. I think the bigger piece is, the reporting tool. How often do you get in front of staff so they can guide others to it? How often do we get it in front of students? One of the items in here is providing parent information and training on the reporting tool. So what does that look like? And how do we get that so it's one thing to hear about it at this point in time, but do you know how to get it when you feel you need it? So, I mean, I think we do have to look at how often are we checking to make sure that we have signage, including the QR code up for the reporting tool in our schools. Also, I mean, it's on the website, it's under the quick links. There's not a lot more we could do to promote it more effectively on the website. But again, the nature of websites is there's a lot on them, and finding what you want is sometimes problematic. So, I mean, I think for us, trying to make the reporting tool, I mean, it's accessible, but what does it mean in practice to be accessible? I mean, you want it to be easy to find when you have the need to find it, not when we provide you with the training. So and I think that's something where we need to provide the training and information to families, but I think we need to really listen to family feedback on what do you need to feel like you've got more reliable access to it, and see if there are things we can do based on that feedback.
If I can just add to it, I mean, I think the piece of saying, well, you've heard us talk about EduClimber for several years, now you see a move. Well, the whole purpose is to make data more accessible and easy to access and to be able to disaggregate it. I mean, I'm not a power user of EduClimber, I can find my way through it. This is super easy. I mean, this is icon based, it's click based versus having to know multiple layers to get to the data you want. So it's built by the same folks who were the original architects of EduClimber. And then they're coming back and now providing a newer, more user-friendly, in my opinion, way to access data. So I think the transition to staff is going to be very simple, in my opinion. And I think that was when we had it demoed for us at cabinet, that was a pretty universal thought around our team. So to that level, I think that would be helpful, not only in this space, but in all of our data needs across the district.
And I think at least some of my colleagues in other districts that have already moved to it have said, oh my gosh, it's so easy and intuitive and, you know,
Right.
and really positive feedback, so.
I remember seeing communication, as an action step, creating a communication tool in here. And I thought it was for current,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's towards the end.
Mhm. Yeah, and a piece of that can be for students as well, because I know that there is a communication gap on the fact that the reporting tool is in quick links. I think that there can be a repeated communication and advisory or whatever makes sense for students to say, this is where it is, and this is what it means, because just to reinforce that message that there is not going to be retaliation if you use the tool. Because I think students need to hear that.
Yeah, just have like a regular cycle of, oh, we're doing once in the fall, once in the winter. once in the-
Yes. Yep.
Sydney, I don't know when it should happen, you know, in the brief, there's so much here. But at some point, would it be helpful to identify the format of the action? Because I would think some of it would be on computerized basis, some of it, you know, the format or the person responsible or the group of people responsible for each of the actions. So maybe another column in there of how does it really happen? What, who's the responsible party, or where is the data found?
Yeah, absolutely, because it, like, even obviously you speak up as an example, like that's really in the student services realm. So
Yeah,
we have people trained in each building, but Lisa would be the one who would coordinate,
yeah.
you know, when we're gonna do the training and how often, and when you're making sure that each building was doing refreshers. So exactly right, it's not, oh, on me for sure, there's a lot of people involved, so I like that idea.
It could be similar, Tiffany, to some of the things we've done in some of our management pieces that we've
Yeah.
worked. on. So something similar.
Otherwise, great.
We'll have it narrowed down and looking a little prettier next time you see it, so.
I'm not worried about
All right.
Or more readable, I think. I just feel like this is, it's too long and I gotta condense it, make it more friendly. So, reader.
Again, I appreciate the comprehensiveness of it, and what I'm hearing. We have a lot to do, but you're gonna be planning it in a way that's accomplishable, and I think that's really the important thing, so.
When you look for, when is the next meeting of the group?
It's at the end of May, I think the 30th, I think, or 28th, somewhere right in there. So it's all right.
End of May. So then kind of looking forward for when like the final draft would be done. Probably looking at sometime in June.
Yeah, I would say maybe after, like, I would maybe even, you know, bring it to our retreat as we have conversations at our retreat, just for review and,
Retreats the second week in June,
Mhm.
so that could kind of go there.
yeah,
And then it could come back to this committee. Does that make sense?
I think. it makes sense.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Last item. The last item we had was the board student listening sessions. So I think, Rebecca, do you want to just talk a little bit for a second about what you've attached here? You've received them from.
I received notes from one of the board members who attended each of the meetings so far. There's one meeting left next week. And I basically just took the notes as given and kind of put them in one document. It's not showing up here because this is our public view and our notes are for anyone with a login only.
Yeah, I did that just in case there was anything identifying in there because they were just wrong notes. So,
Anything else you want? Me to do?
no, that was it. I just wanted to kind of get the context of what you added to it. So,
I've gone to I think I'm gonna attend one more this week. They've all been, I think, really positive. I went to one where the kids were a little unsure of their role and our role. So that one was just a little awkward. But, you know, still, we talked about, the cell phone rule that is kind of being talked about and probably rolled out next year. There was still some good content that was discussed. In the next one I went to, they had specific topics that they wanted to make sure we heard concerns. And the other one was, oh, the student council. They also had very specific and some interesting topics.
Yes.
So I'm not sure where we want to go, or even if we want to bring the specific topics up, they're all in the notes, but I have found a little more structure to the, I can't say drastically different than we've done in the past.
That was gonna be my question, did the protocol help provide any of that? So it moved in the
For
right direction,
some-
but it wasn't.
For some groups, I think it depended on the leader and how often they meet and if they had time to even generate questions in advance. I'm not sure everybody was able to do that.
Mhm.
Anyway, it's still a positive experience. I think the kids really appreciate having us there and learning a little bit about our role in conjunction to where they sit in their student life. So, I mean, I think they're valuable. I don't know, Mark, I know you've done several.
Yeah, I was two, thank you for coming to me on the third one. I thought the format was very helpful, both for me as a board member, and I think also for the students in attendance. There's always two of us board members present. It typically started with just kind of defining how we function and that we were going to listen to their ideas, but that we're not the problem solvers, but we would share the information with who the problem solvers are. Clarifying what our roles as school board versus administration. The one group I had, Senadores, was the most prepared group I've ever belonged to. They had met prior to, they put together a 4-point agenda with what they like about their group, what
So they really used our format.
yeah, what they do, what they get out of their group, and then what's working, and then how we could assist them with some significant things. And I thought they had some very excellent suggestions that have to do with career planning, has to do with support with academics. Some of our initiatives on the board with the hiring of the bilingual counselors can be a big step to assist in that. But so from that group and also the principals council, there are some interesting academic suggestions. And I think those are things that we could disseminate to the committees and or the administration that's appropriate to help really generate some action. And what I've done at this point, I haven't shared the information with the clubs. But I thought that's the question we have to say, how, so we just send them our notes and we say, okay, this is what we're going to do with them. But I did assure them that there would be a communication back from us, and that's something I think we need to kind of agree on how we're going to do that.
Do you want to talk about that today or just in the general meeting?
What do you think doing something similar to what you did with staff, notes to the administration?
Yeah. So with our staff listening session, we kind of sent them on to each of the building administrations and all of the cabinet members or administrators in this building. I had one that wanted some follow-up that I met with. And I was just going to then ask other board members if they had had any conversations with administration or if these notes precipitated any conversations with other people, kind of summarize that. And I'm going to send it back to WTA to send it. So, you know, again, we aren't really the problem solvers in most cases, but I think it's important for them to know. You know, I know one of the actions that came out of the YCC group went to the co-curricular committee and actually had some action. Because that was brought up at our meeting that day. So I think there are some specific things that do come out of some of the conversation.
Once the notes have been sanitized of any specific group or student, do you guys have any objection to the follow-ups? I do think circle back is important, otherwise they're gonna feel like they wasted our time.
Right.
Do you have any objection to them being placed into, we heard the following from students in general, student groups in general. This is what we did, whether that's passing it on or taking it to a subcommittee. And then feeding that back, that same information, because I think where I'm going with it and the point of very taking a roundabout path to get to is that I think the other groups would be curious to say like, oh, they said something similar or have
Right,
similar.
because there were
challenges.
similarities.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that, I don't know how much more we really can do at this point.
Okay.
But all that information and, you know, I think included in those notes, Dawn, is the content still helps us. It may not help this year, but maybe in a year from now, a
Right.
conversation will come up in a committee and I'll say, yeah, I remember hearing that from students and that might change. Like I heard something about school lunches. And we might not be looking at a new provider this year, but maybe when we do, I'll remember some of the comments that they made about school lunch and their concerns. So it's still, you know, it's still valuable information for us to kind of hear.
yeah, and I think it's really is, I don't know who sends the information where. I mean, so I know one of the groups had a recommendation for sporting activities. And that considering allowing students in free as long as they have their ID.
Absolutely.
And I can think of multiple populations where that might be the one barrier to getting in. And so, you know, to me, that needs to get to the co-curricular committee as a concept. And so that's the thing I want to make sure happens, that the information gets where it's got to go.
Yeah.
So I think we have one more group that needs to still, once we get the notes from that, I think we can. Rebecca, you and I can work together and we put them into it. We can kind of just kind of summarize kind of what those are. And I think we can see some of the pathways as far as whether, when you see some pieces that are just practices at the high school, but they like to go like. Some of those other items, as you mentioned, may find their way to committees. So I think we can put something together like that. And if you want to shoot something off, or I guess Dawn as the
Dawn,
chair of the committee,
yeah.
you can shoot something off.
Yeah.
We can help work through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
That's
I
good.
think that was our last agenda item, but am I mistaken or is there another one? Okay.
Yeah, so what I thought is kind of our. So I'm looking forward to kind of future agendas. Is. Probably it's really following up on what Tiffany is stating with that plan. And then maybe it's just final follow-up as far as what you're doing with those listening session notes and pieces. And we'll probably address that before it gets to that point,
Mhm.
but. You know, you're comfortable kind of, that would kind of mean a meeting like. Mid to late June.
So is the plan in a DEI subcommittee meeting or is it to the offsite?
The offsite, you mean,
The more detail or
I think that's coming here.
The retreat.
Yeah, it's
Well,
gonna come
it's
to
going
the,
to the retreat.
Yeah, it's-
After the retreat, it would
But
come.
not the board retreat.
Not our
oh, yeah,
retreat.
the
Yeah,
admin retreat.
yeah,
The
the-
admin retreat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the, yeah,
The other
the
retreat.
administrative. Yeah.
But we may have some of those items at our retreat, but.
Yeah, ours is in
specifically-
July though, right?
July,
That's I'm so
correct.
confused. I'm
Yeah.
like, I could swear the retreat was in
Yeah,
July.
the admin
Okay.
retreat's 2 days. That's one that Monica will be here for.
Okay,
And she'll be kind of, and there's a group of our admin that are putting that together. I'm not part of that. She's part of it, and then they'll move forward, but this is kind of planning for next year. And then this would be kind of vetted out there, and I think you have, when I saw the brief agenda you looked at, this is a big part of some of that work. So then after that, the admin retreat's like the 13th and 14th, so 12th and 13th.
Mhm.
And then of June, so maybe that following week, then we would do that.
okay.
So I think part of it is we can hold off and scheduling that to know who the committee is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we should.
Yeah,
do
because that's the piece that I'm not sure how much change there will be, but kind of wait and see how the reorg goes and then the reorganization of the committees and then get that on the next agenda.
Okay.
I see those as-
Which weeks in June would we be targeting? Some of the kind of tentative.
Probably
remarks
the
and
third
stuff.
week in June is my guess.
So like the week
Look at the 17th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be on the committee then. I'm
Uh,
gone that whole week.
okay,
could be
yeah, I
the
was gonna say
17th
that
or-
I'm gone that whole week too,
Oh,
so
it could be
if,
the following.
in
The
the event
following
we're
week,
both
in the event
in
we're
the-
both on that, we'll do
yeah,
it the next.
we'll look at the week of the
What's the
24th.
But
week done?
we're gonna have
The
the
week of the
committee by
23rd.
then too, right? So are we waiting till after that to set the meeting?
We're not gonna set the meeting until the new committees
Right.
are,
Oh, we're just saying,
Yeah.
should we be on it
should we be
the
on
week of
it?
the 24th?
Week of the 24th.
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
And then I can kind of block off my evenings that week.
There's actually DPI is doing the disproportionality institute in Green Bay on that Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'd probably have to do like Thursday. If I'm leaving for Green Bay.
So it's not, and we're not setting a meeting, but
But just,
Thursday, the 27th.
yeah,
worked
just
really good for you.
possible. I'll put a
Okay.
question mark.
So, yeah, why don't you just kind of mark that and then we'll come back to that when we set it. But I wrote that down as the
Yeah,
the
that would-
June 27th.
That would be enough.
Will be my last. meeting.
Your last committee.
Last meeting.
Uh-oh, get in trouble.
Okay, I don't wanna.
Motion to,
I have a 7 o'clock.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
How's Tom doing?
leave tomorrow.
Oh, Tom.